We see it everywhere we look, even on the toys our children buy. Gender stereotyping is everywhere.
Well, personally, I feel gender stereotyping is, a wrong thing to happen, but it does occur.
So, where do we get these stereotypes from? Dr. Joan Hermson is the Women and Gender Studies Department Chair at the University of Missouri. She says these stereotypes stem from all aspects of our environments.
Well, I think it comes from personal experience. What do people encounter around them, right? And then also from the media that we encounter. All kinds of media give us images of what's the right kinds of jobs for us.
These roles start as soon as we're born. Girls dress in pink and boys dress in blue, and they continue on through our childhood. Think about the toys your parents bought you when you were young. Girls get play kitchens and dolls, and boys get trains and building blocks.
You see probably less gender stereotyping in terms of what parents expect of their children, the range of activities. We know parents still are narrower in the range of activities they'll allow their sons to do, the kinds of emotional expressions that they think are appropriate for sons versus daughters.
These roles are also reinforced through the media.
When we think of who's a firefighter, who's a nurse, we're going to think in some gendered roles based on what we've seen in our own life experience and in the media presented to us.
The media tends to present certain jobs as men jobs or women's job. One of these is nursing.
I actually started in journalism, and I started studying and doing like the prereqs and stuff like that. And I started taking a biology class, and we started talking about cancer cells and things like that. And I just found it way more interesting than the stuff I was studying at the time.
I would say out of a class of, any given class I have of 30 students, at most I have 1 or 2 males.
This gender gap is decreasing.
And it's changing, but it's a slow pace of change.
But the stereotypes still exist.
You definitely have seen a shift, but men go into different specialties than women do.
Maybe in certain departments, you might have a stereotype, but like in the emergency room, I work in the float pool, so I work all over the hospital. And I would say there's a lot of male nurses in critical care, in emergency, cardiac tele. Those are the predominant departments where I see male nurses.
Holton says the type of stereotyping today is different from the type that happened a few decades ago.
And it's never been anything really pronounced or anything like that, but sometimes it's more of like the jobs that they'll give you as opposed to like something someone would say to you or something like that. And what I mean by that is like someone might say, oh, could you move this patient, or more physical labor kind of things, because they assume that, oh, you're a man, so you're strong.
Whereas a few decades ago, males in the nursing field just did not exist.
I worked with older men in a certain facility, and one of the things that I found was that they seemed taken aback by a man working in the nursing role where they may have usually seen women.
But Holton says there are pros and cons to stereotyping within the nursing field.
They're good and sometimes they're bad, honestly. I think that they can be good in the sense of sometimes women are just more empathetic to situations, and by that I mean that they have a better capacity for emotions than men can be.
There is still a gender gap in many other professions.
For some groups, the stereotyping is getting better. For others, it's not changing. It's probably just as bad as it was.
White-collar professions like nursing are decreasing the gender gap, where blue-collar jobs seem to be staying the same. We talked to Columbia Construction Company, and they said that they had no women construction workers. The only women in the company were project managers.
So if we're talking about like women in construction, women in shipbuilding, women electricians, plumbers, etc., I don't think the attitudes towards them have changed very much. I think they still have to have a lot to prove to be able to do those jobs, and they have to tolerate a lot of kind of everyday harassment likely in the job site because of being an outsider. I think it's different if we're talking about men that are entering women's jobs like nursing, which is considered a skilled profession, even like educational administration in schools, secondary ed, that's all, more men are entering all of those, and there's certainly less discrimination or stereotyping of the men who do those jobs. In fact, men are often sought out and sort of privileged when they do those jobs, or social workers, for example, because so few men enter some of these fields, they're really desirable.
So what sparked the change?
It used to be like in the 50s and 60s, moms stayed at home. They did not work. Or if they did work, it wasn't in necessarily a white-collar profession.
In the past 50 years, more and more women have been entering the workplace in many jobs that have long been considered men's jobs.
When people go into fields that people didn't expect them to go into, particular gender-type fields, it's probably they've had a role model or a mentor along the way who said, you'd be really good at that. And so they take a look at it and think about it.
It's these role models that decrease gender stereotyping, and that's why they're so important.
I was delighted there were men working at my son's preschool, that my child has exposure to at least one male teacher in his elementary school, because I want him to see, you can be a guy and do things that involve caring and nurturing kinds of work, and that's important for being a man. You're not just seeing your dad do it, you see people do it in other jobs around you.
Hermsen also says in addition to these role models, different programs help, but something more needs to be done.
Institutional programs that help attract people into different career paths are important. But I also think if we're trying to deal with this on a larger cultural thing, it means we have to think about what are the images we present through all the media forms that we're exposed to. And so if you're, watching some show about cops, does every cop have to be a guy? No, police officers can be women.
That's why the media should show more diversity in the jobs that people do.
We miss out when we shut doors to people based on gender, race, sexual orientation, whatever.
We, as a society, only hurt ourselves with gender stereotypes. When we close doors on people, we take away our own opportunity to see what they have to offer.